Hello and welcome to today's video. My name's Haley and this is part 2 of 2 of the 8th shadow called Mediocrity within this 8th gene key, Diamond of the Self. If you haven't seen part 1 to this shadow portion, I recommend backtracking and watching that, seeing as though this video is a continuation of that video. The last thing I mentioned in the previous video was that mediocrity, this shadow state, has a 2-part action. Firstly being it keeps you from thinking outside of the box, and secondly, it serves the machinery of society rather than evolution. Right, and then I left us off with the very, very, very cheesy but very, very true truth that you are not meant to be a background player in life. You're meant to be, a major player, front and center. So you're not meant to be mediocre, you're meant to do big things. The cheese is always true. Richard Rudd continues on here to say that this shadow prevents us from believing in ourselves enough to embody such a life. He talks about how fear is an endemic through the very infrastructure of our society. Fear permeates every single action we take as a society, right? I mean, even to the way that we school our children is done through a lens of fear. Oh, we need them all to be mediocre so that they all at least achieve baseline success so that we are somewhat moving forward. We don't have the gamble, the risk in us to school a different way because fear is underlying the current way we go about things. I mean, fear is present in everything. That's just one example. And something I've contemplated is this idea that every action you take, whether it's how you choose to school your children, what you choose to wear, who you choose to hang out with, what school you choose to go to, I don't know, what job or career you choose, is either rooted in a decision based on a foundation of fear or a more high vibrational manifestation of love. Every single decision is either taken with this energy behind it of either fear or love, with either lack or abundance is another way to say that. I'll give you guys a simple example. Say you're getting dressed in the morning and you put on your favorite t-shirt and your weird sneakers, and I don't know, maybe you want to wear one shoe that's pink, one shoe that's orange, and nothing really matches and you feel all spunky and super cute, but then you go to school and Jimmy tells you that your outfit's weird and that your shoes need to match. Okay, you wake up the next morning, you get dressed. As per usual, you're choosing random things that make your heart smile, and then all of a sudden you remember Jimmy's comment, maybe I should wear 2 orange shoes instead of my weird getup of the one pink, one orange. You decide to go to school that day in 2 orange shoes, and that decision was made out of fear. Whereas the day prior, you could say the decision was made in presence in what's bringing you joy, what's bringing you love. But very quickly, even subliminally, you can choose to dress differently because of something someone said. And that's a fear-based decision, right? Because now it's coming out of the need for admiration from something outside of you. So every decision is either made, again, from fear or love, from a need of wanting to feel accepted, from a fear of not being accepted, or from a presence, a love, and a genuine interest of what you actually desire yourself. That's a whole rabbit hole of a conversation. Back to this. Richard Rudd is talking about how this fear is endemic throughout every infrastructure of our society. And it's this fear, this shadow that is preventing us from believing in ourselves. And if you don't believe in yourselves, then yeah, you are going to take the mediocre path because it's safer. It has this security of illusion, once again returning to a phrase from the last video. So we have to move through this threshold of fear. Cool. Awareness is the first step. Now that I know I have to move through this threshold of fear, how do I do that? We're gonna get to that. But it's good to identify that fear is the issue. Fear is what we have to move through in order to escape the shadow state of mediocrity. And I will also just say this, even though it doesn't seem like a huge deal to identify what the issue is, it is. The first step of anything is awareness. How can you fix something unless you know what it is? And even having the courageousness to declare, yeah, I am afraid, or yeah, I made that decision out of fear, is a huge step, because it's finally showing the divine, God, source energy, mana prana shakti, whatever you want to call that thing inside of you and all around you, that you have the willingness to go about things in a different way, in a more loving way. And you need to be open in order to invite in a divine energy that can help move you into a new phase of evolution. So awareness is good, awareness is necessary, and this is a big step, understanding what the issue is, which is this endemic of fear preventing us from exiting this shadow state. He says that this mediocrity marries you to the system, makes you a follower of outside authorities, right? Whether it's you're reporting to your boss, or you're reporting to society, or you're reporting to all of your friend group, you're essentially checking to make sure that it's okay, that it's accepted, that you're validated by something outside of you. So authority in this sense means anything from, governmental authority to society itself, or to even your close and small friend and family group. You're a follower of what the norm is that you surround yourself with, the norm of your environment. It prevents you from being a free thinker. And then he poses this question, what is a free thinker? Okay, so I thought about that. In my opinion, before I kept reading, I said, what is a free thinker? I said, a free thinker is someone who can hit pause on whatever's going on around them. Okay, yeah, maybe everyone at school is wearing matching shoes and the trend this year is a bob, but I really like long mermaid hair and wearing shoes that don't match. Or hell, maybe I don't like wearing shoes at all. So being a free thinker, in my opinion, is having the, first of all, once again, awareness, and then strength, the awareness to pause and say, what do I think? And then two, the strength to follow through with what you think is right. What you know feels right. What you feel like doing, and then going to do it would be the ultimate bow tie on being a free thinker, going against the grain. Richard Rudd says that a free thinker is someone who can see beyond the current structures imposed by life. It's a person who lives for the spontaneity of their own creativity. Free thinkers live freely. They follow no one. That's poetic. Leave it to Richard Rudd to always hit us with a definition that's not only extremely accurate, but also just so blissful to listen to. Yeah, everything he says sounds like silk to me. So that is what a free thinker is. And I read that and I thought, yep, that is perfect. And actually, this is something else important to note, is I can be a free thinker and think of my own definition about what a free thinker is, and then I can go and read someone else's definition and still agree with it. So a free thinker, a rebel, isn't someone who has to be different. It's just someone who has the ability to be different and not be swayed by other people's opinions out of fear. They can be swayed by other people's opinions out of love, out of inspiration, out of motivation, how I was just now, right? I had my own definition of free thinker, and then I go and read Richard Rudd's. That made me feel glittery and blissful and silky, and I was inspired by it, and I have decided now to adopt some of his definition, some of the way he thinks, into the way I think. And so I think this is really important to note, is that being a free thinker, exiting this state of mediocrity, doesn't mean you have to be completely on your own and reject all of society and what it thinks. It just means you have the awareness, You turn on your own prefrontal cortex and you ask yourself what you actually think is beautiful, resonant, and in harmony. And sometimes that does happen to align with someone else's definition or way of being. And I think the first contemplation of this video, just after saying all this, comes to mind, which is, think of a time where someone, maybe you know them personally, maybe you just saw them on the street, inspired you to find more of you, be more of you, or express more of you. An example being, this is really silly, but this is what comes to mind. I remember in kindergarten, we used to do these coloring sheets. And this one girl next to me, I don't even remember her name, but she used to color a very specific way, and like super dark on the outside and then like very light, super dark and very light. And it had these like shades to it. Very advanced for a kindergartner, I must say. And I remember I'd look at her paper and I thought, wow, that's beautiful. I like the way she colors. And so I started to do it on little bits and pieces. So she was able to inspire me and motivate me to add to the way in which I express myself. It's a simple example, but it's a nice way to generate gratitude, to think of the people that have inspired you to move about the world in a certain way, out of love. And once again, you know it's being done out of love if there's no need for external validation. I wasn't doing it because I wanted her to think I was cool or because I wanted other people to notice. I was doing it simply because I thought it was beautiful. That's just it. Ooh, then he throws some words at us. That is another way to describe mediocrity. Compromised lifestyles, unimaginative, conformist, the 9-to-5, going to college, traditional route. Again, nothing's wrong with these things if you're choosing them of your own free will out of love. But when doing them out of the fear or need of validation from society, you're in the shadow of mediocrity. Another way to say this is lived by the majority. He says that it takes great energy and courage to push through this shadow and find out who you really are, what you're truly capable of. Of course, it takes an enormous amount of energy to work through this. You have to quite literally open your eyes and keep opening your own eyes in the midst of a society that tells you we all need to be the same. And as you do start to do this, yeah, you can bet you people are going to be real threatened, right? Back to the last video. They're going to have a sense of both fear and awe that you're going against the norm. That might trigger people, prompt them to tell you not to do what you're doing, throw hate at you perhaps, warn you, pity you. All sorts of weird emotions can surface from other people as you start to cultivate the energy and the courage to push through this fear, this shadow state of mediocrity. He says it's going to be a path like no other, and it will take you beyond the comfort zone. That's the whole point of this shadow, or of this key, I should say, is getting out of the comfort zone, seeking discomfort, because once we have the awareness that discomfort, the unknown, is where love lives, where greater levels of you live, where your purpose and your gifts are waiting to be unlocked, that gnosis drives you into that place, into that want to take the risk. And before we get into repressive and reactive nature, this last line here, he says, there's no assurance that you will succeed except for your faith in your own deep and vibrant nature. There's a little secret hidden in that sentence. There is no assurance. I can't guarantee that you will succeed except for your faith in your own deep and vibrant nature. Okay, so this implies that if I'm able to cultivate faith in myself, a deep faith in myself, in my own vibrant nature, then I'm assured success. But if I don't have that faith, the assurance is not there. And faith is interesting because faith can only be cultivated by the individual. I can't give you faith. You who's watching this can't go give some random person faith. I mean, to a certain degree, you can inspire people around you. Once again, help them and inspire them through love. But true faith, true trust in life can only really be chosen to grow and flourish within the individual by them themselves choosing it. You have to really want to become faithful, to become trusting in life, to feel certain that things are working out the way they're supposed to be working out. And there's nothing your mother can say about it that's going to make it any better. You have to really want and really, ironically enough, have the faith that you can have more faith to have more faith. Hopefully that makes sense. It's like a muscle. It's like going to the gym. I've used that analogy before as well. The more you ask for faith, endow faith, the more it will come to you. The more you have, the bigger momentum you gain, the upward you spiral, the bigger your muscle gets to have faith. So your success lies in your faith. That's an important correlation to make. Once again, success being defined as whatever you define as success. This goes beyond the societal norm that success is equated to the 9-to-5 job, the happy marriage, the picket fence with the 2 kids, and the money in the bank. Success in this definition is whatever you decide it is, and it's contingent upon your own ability to trust in life and your own process. And I think it might be fun here to meditate upon the word faith and what it means to you if you're watching this, because it is such a broad, multifaceted term. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that. So the repressive nature he calls wooden. I read that and I thought, tell me more, Richard Rudd. Wooden. Interesting way to describe that. And he says these people are devoid of life force and lacking a true sense of purpose, right? They're so far removed from their gifts in here. They're living such mediocre lives, going with the cadence and the rhythm of society, that they have no idea what's in here. Devoid of life force, completely detached. They lack fire and grit, he says, and because of this, they've allowed themselves to become hollow. So this is why he's calling them wooden, like a hollow piece of wood. Right, a hollow piece of wood from the outside looks full, but then if you're to cut it open, in fact, it is empty inside. But it looks the same as a wood that's full on the inside if you cut it open, right? They look the same until you cut them open. He says that these people gave up on their dreams. Oof. Without embracing their fears, they got swallowed up by their responsibilities, by what society told them they should be. And they made many compromises. And the result is that they live lives that do not belong to them, or they allow them the space to breathe or create. Okay, so essentially these are the kinds of people that played it safe. Oh, well, mom told me I had to go to college, so I just went. I wasn't a free thinker. I didn't bother to contemplate that there's another way to go about things. And even if I did have that thought, the fear was so great, so big, that I didn't even entertain the idea of not listening to mom. I was swallowed by fear. I was overtaken by responsibility from the outside. I made compromises on how I actually felt. I didn't even give myself the room or the space to breathe and think about what I want. I just allowed the authorities outside of me, again, whether that's family, friends, government, or school, to tell me how to be. And now I feel empty inside as a byproduct of all of that. And so we'll get into this in the next video when we get into the gift of style, how to escape this hollowness. Yeah, but I read that and I was like, oof, okay. One of the first things that kind of I thought of was there's this teenage rebellious spirit of no. You know, when a kid starts to really learn the word no, first at the age of 2, and then again within the teenage years. And it actually, in my opinion, has a lot to do with that phase of life. When you're a teenager and you start to rebel against your parents, I think that's a really crucial step to making sure you don't get caught in this repressive nature of woodenness. I myself know when I turned 16, I got a boyfriend. I went from little Miss Goody Two-Shoes to, I don't care, I'm sneaking out to hang out with my boyfriend. Or I'm gonna skip track practice and go see my boyfriend. And, you know, at the time, thank God I turned out to be okay. But I do think that rebellion, that rebellious nature in me, taught me how to be like, no, this is what I want to do. I'm in love with my boyfriend. I want to go sneak out of school and hang out with him. I don't care that I'm supposed to be in school or at track practice or sleeping at home. I'm going to sneak out. And so I do think, in a weird way, kind of this teenage rebellion makes you foolproof to this repressive nature of woodenness. And obviously the nature of rebellion can flourish at any point in life, but naturally I associate it to those teenage years because that's where it's most prominent. So just something interesting to contemplate. When you were a teenager, were you rebellious? Did you start to say no? Or did you play it safe and out of fear of disappointing one of your authorities, ignore maybe some of those angsty, rebellious impulses? And the reactive nature is artificial. So I basically highlighted this entire section because it was extremely interesting to me. The reactive nature of mediocrity is being artificial. Before I even continued to read, I thought, oh, I've definitely been artificial. And again, you can switch off with struggling between the repressive or the reactive nature. I know I had a tendency, and still do, to fall into reactive nature rather than repressive. Once again, you can associate reactivity with anxiety and repressive with depressive. Reactive has a lot of energy behind it, negative energy, but nonetheless energy. And repressive, you can think of depressive, there's a lack of energy, there's a devoid of energy. So this reactive nature of being artificial. He says that within the repressive nature of woodenness, the spirit has collapsed inward, whereas with this reactive nature, the spirit is channeled into a world where it creates an illusion of itself based upon its dreams. So everyone on Instagram, for the most part. The old me on Instagram, Jesus Christ. I'm like, if you have been following me for a while, you've seen me just dramatically shift from being hyper artificial to kind of just like, I don't give a fuck. And this goes to both ends as well, right? You can be artificial to the infinite, and you can start to be more and more yourself to the infinite. So that's something beautiful to note. He says, on the surface, they seem successful and even original, but beneath their patina, they have compromised their spirit to some aspect of the system. Yeah, I read that and I was like, ooh, wow. It's as if Richard Rudd was spying on me when he wrote this. On the surface of my old persona, I guess you could say, my old Instagram, I had this surface of, oh, I'm successful, I live this glamorous life, I'm a model in New York City, and I'm also kind of quirky and cool and whatever. No, really, guys, I was depressed, extremely anxious, very mentally ill and physically ill. And I definitely had compromised my spirit to a large degree in order to uphold this illusion that I was presenting. And so this is something important to note, is that this artifice requires a person to sell part of their soul, right? To use a lot of their own creative life force energy to uphold certain illusions. And it's exhausting. And eventually it collapses, right? And then he says something very interesting here. He says, you can spot the difference between repressive woodenness and reactive artifice between their relationships. The repressive side, the woodenness, never leaves their relationships because they fear change. They're stagnant. Whereas the reactive side cannot stay in their relationships. Artificial people cannot stay in relationships because their facade inevitably breaks down and rage rises to the surface, at which point they usually run away. And this is true. I know this because that was me. I was so kind of fake, artificial, upholding these illusions that I couldn't let anyone get too close to me because then they'd see the real me. And then what would I have? Well, then I'd have the real me, but at the time that scared me. And so anyways, if you are struggling with this reactive nature of artifice, then you can ask yourself, what do my relationships look like? I mean, really, if you're struggling with either of these, the repressive or the reactive nature, what do my relationships look like? Am I so scared of change that I just don't change? I'm paused, I'm depressed, I'm hollow inside. I'm scared to seek out the friendships I actually desire. Go do the things I actually want to do and see what people are already doing those things. Or am I upholding such a large facade that the moment someone gets too close to me, I go MIA, aka I have an avoidant attachment style. Same thing. It's interesting because your relationships reveal to you where you have room to grow and also reveal to you where you've already grown. And there's the beautiful thing about this, again, infinite to both ends, there's always more work to be done. There's always more room to grow within your relationships because that is the nature of evolution, right? It never really ends, it keeps going. So that's also something I want to point out. It's not like I'm like, oh, I just don't struggle with any of these things anymore. No, everyone has a shadow. The shadow surfaces. You can always work on that shadow to evolve into a gift frequency and then eventually a acidic state. This is the cycle. Life will keep washing us through these cycles. And I think it's just, again, utilizing the gift of your consciousness to identify where you are in that cycle. Maybe right now as you're watching this video, you're feeling really good. You're like, actually, I don't feel hollow. I also don't think I'm being artificial. Okay, then let's celebrate that. And maybe in the next video, you can contemplate that you're in the current frequency of style. But also being real with yourself and being like, you know what? Yeah, I have been showing up a little artificial in specifically the aspect of my life that pertains to my job. And yeah, I could do some work on just showing up as the real me at work. Even though that might scare me to do so. So all this to say, it's on a spectrum. Awareness is the first step. Identify where you think you are at, and then go from there and have the strength to keep moving through this cycle of evolution. That wraps up this shadow state of mediocrity. Stay tuned for the next video for the gift of style. And yeah, it's not what you think it is. I'll just say that. It's very interesting. So I'll see you guys next time. Hey guys, thanks again for tuning in with me for this Gene Keys episode. I also just wanted to come on here and start promoting my one-to-one coaching that I offer to women and girls ages 16 to 35. If you've followed me on Instagram for a while, you might be a little bit familiar with my story. I was a model in New York City for 5 years, and in that time frame, I did quite some damage. I developed a really severe eating disorder, body dysmorphia, chronic anxiety. Oh my gosh, I couldn't even go out to dinner without thinking about how much calories, how much I'd have to overwork out in order to compensate for what I was eating. All of those issues led to quite a depression and turned into PCOS, and I also lost my menstrual cycle for over 5 years. All of this amalgamation of issues led me to soon realize that something needed to change. I went through much work. Many people helped me to get to where I am now. And I'm so thrilled to say I'm living such a more abundant life, and I don't feel zapped and drained and fear of judgment anymore like I used to. I would love to offer what I've learned through my own embodied experience, the meditative techniques that have gravitated toward me, and the own verified games that I've made up and curated to help you walk home to more of you and who you really are, so that all of these things can stop draining your energy. You know, all the constant comparison to others and to your people on Instagram, all the over-analysis about working out and what you're eating or what you look like. All of these things are not what life's about, as cheesy as it sounds. And I would love to help you come into more unity with you if you struggle with any of these things and you're a woman or girl between the ages of 16 and 35. So feel free to reach out to me if one-on-one coaching sounds resonant. You can feel free to DM me through Instagram or contact me via email, both of which will be left below in the description box. So much love and aloha to you guys, and I'll see you all in the next video.